And again, I just want to thank everybody for being here and everybody on my committee. There's been a lot of times I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to navigate through this. And just everybody here has played a role in some way and just making me feel confident and just helping me get through it. And I would not be at this point in my PhD if it were not for you, Dr. G. And Tori, I know you haven't been here long, but since you have been here, you've been so helpful and I've asked you a million questions and you've just been pertaining to so many things. And I just really appreciate you. And Dr. Young, I know it's been a while since we've talked, but I'm just so fortunate to have you here, and TWU has a special place in my heart. So just to have you here with your APE background and from my master's institution, it just really means a lot to me. And my cohort, I just appreciate you guys just being here. And I asked several of you many questions and you guys have just always given me an answer and been so supportive. And I'm just thankful to be here and have this experience and for Dr. G's flexibility. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. And you guys can hear me okay, right? Can you see my screen? Okay. Start. There we go. Okay, perfect. And you guys can see the full screen, right? There's nothing blocking it. Okay. Alrighty. So to get started, the title of my study is Factors That Contribute to the Teacher Efficacy of Pre-Service Adapted PE Teachers. And you'll hear me say APE teachers just because it's shorter, or PSTs, that's shorter for pre-service teachers. Let's see here. And before we dive in, I want to provide you guys with a definition of teacher efficacy. I had actually never heard this definition until about a year ago when I took my motivational theory class. I had heard of self-efficacy, but I had no idea there was a thing called teacher efficacy or an area of research dedicated to teacher efficacy and teacher motivation. And I just find it so interesting. And that's why I wanted to do my study over teacher efficacy and teacher motivation. And researchers explain teacher efficacy is described as a teacher believing how qualified they are of affecting both student behavior and academic achievement, including students who have difficulties and or low inspiration for learning. And in this study, teacher efficacy is synonymous for self-efficacy of teachers or teachers' competence as they work with students with disabilities. And to give you a background and reasoning of why I want to do this study, so in my motivational research class, I found out that research shows that teachers' beliefs and attitudes exercise influential effects on both teaching and learning, and teachers' beliefs about the abilities of themselves and their students affect student motivation and success. However, while researchers document the importance and impact of teacher beliefs on student motivation and success, there hasn't been equal focus given to teacher motivation as there has student motivation. And I just find that so interesting because ultimately it all starts with the teacher and their motivation. And I just think that's so crazy that, again, yes, students are important, but if it begins with a teacher, we need to give more dedication to teacher motivation in research. And then looking at the teacher efficacy that has been done, there's been fewer studies dedicated to PE and sport, with even fewer studies implementing qualitative research methods. And then Klassen also provides, there hasn't been much attention given to the causes and sources of teacher efficacy. And then looking at the research that has been done in teacher efficacy as it pertains to pre-service APE teachers, most of it's been done out of the states. And then most of it utilized quantitative inquiry dedicated to our pre-service APEs as they work with students with disabilities. And in that research, they found that exposure to and practice teaching students with disabilities has fueled pre-service teachers' confidence. However, according to self-efficacy theory, outside of previous experience, there's 4 other sources that contribute to teacher efficacy. And little is known about these additional sources and how they influence teachers' confidence in both general PE and APE teacher efficacy research. And additionally, socialization researchers such as Gidrow and Richards provide that PE is a marginalized subject, and that provides challenges for teachers. And further, APE teachers, they have an additional challenge of working with students with disabilities due to the additional knowledge about modifications and disabilities their job requires. So with the challenges of teaching a marginalized subject to students with disabilities, coupled with the gaps in teacher efficacy research, there is a need to discover what other sources contribute to teacher efficacy to better prepare our pre-service APEs for their career so they can feel confident in their capability to teach, which, as research says, will make both teachers and students successful. And with that being said, the purpose of this study is to explore factors that contribute to the teacher efficacy of pre-service APE teachers. I have 5 research questions, and each of them is dedicated to an individual tenet of self-efficacy theory, and we'll jump into that in the next slide. And my research questions are as follows. What performance experiences? What vicarious experiences? What social persuasions? What emotional and physiological states? And then what imaginal experiences are contributing to the self-efficacy of our pre-service APEs? And the theoretical framework I will be using for this study is self-efficacy theory. Albert Bandura defines self-efficacy as an individual's confidence in their own capability to complete a particular task. And Albert Bandura founded this theory in 1977, explaining there's 4 sources that fuel one's self-efficacy. And these are performance experience, vicarious experience, social persuasion, and then physical and emotional states. And then later in 2013, Maddox provided a 5th tenet that fuels one's self-efficacy, and that's imaginal experience. And again, each research question is dedicated to each of the 5 tenets of self-efficacy theory. And then specifically in APE and in this study, performance experience of a pre-service teacher would be their past experiences teaching students PE who have disabilities. Vicarious experience would be the pre-service teachers watching their peers or their professor teach students with disabilities in the PE setting. Social persuasion in this study would be coaching and feedback provided to the pre-service APEs from their professor or administrators. Imaginal experience in this study would be the students envisioning themselves be successful teaching a lesson to their students with disabilities. And then in the study, physical and emotional states would be the pre-service teachers feeling positive physically and emotionally as they teach PE to students with disabilities. And as stated earlier, of the literature we already know performance experience, past experience of teaching students with disabilities and their time as a pre-service teacher fuels pre-service APE self-efficacy. However, there is nothing in the literature about these 4, or that I was able to find, and how these 4 aid and contribute to the self-efficacy of pre-service APE teachers. And then moving on to the method, I will be using a basic interpretive design for this study, and the overall purpose of this design is to understand how people make sense of their lives and their experiences. In order to do that, this design will utilize data collection such as interviews, observations, and the analysis of important documents. This specific design will allow me to gain insight about the additional factors that contribute to the teacher efficacy of pre-service teachers. And then Worthington provides that a basic interpretive design can be used to uncover strategies, techniques, and practices of highly effective teachers and administrators. And then moving forward, participants for this study will be 4 pre-service PE teachers enrolled in an undergraduate APE PEAK course at a large university in the Southwest US. In addition to being in the APE PEAK course, the pre-service teachers will also be involved in a fieldwork experience at an elementary school teaching PE to students with disabilities. And not only are these students getting that fieldwork experience, I'm going to go back to my theoretical framework slide. So again, my participants in my setting, not only are my participants, my pre-service teachers, getting that experience teaching students with disabilities, they're also going to be provided vicarious experience because they're also going to be observing their peers and their professor teaching students with disabilities. They're also going to be provided social persuasion by getting coaching and feedback from their peers, their professor, and their administrators. They're also going to be coached on how to have visualizations of future success. And they're also going to be coached on how to possess positive physical and emotional states when it comes to working with students with disabilities. So it is a field experience. They are getting that teaching experience, but they're also getting these 4 other sources, 5 in total, that contribute to self-efficacy in their field placement. And then moving forward to data collection, I have 6 sources that I'll be using. The first source will be 3 semi-structured interviews. These will take place face-to-face with an outside researcher. And I'm going to take a step back, but all of the forms of data collection will be grounded in self-efficacy theory, my theoretical framework. And so again, we'll start with 3 semi-structured interviews face-to-face by an outside researcher. Prior to each interview, the students will be given the teacher efficacy definition, and then the 5 sources of self-efficacy and what those mean and what those look like. And then the students will also be participating in 3 reflections in the form of journal entries. The outside researcher will send these via email to the pre-service teachers. The pre-service teachers will record their responses and send it back to the outside researcher. And again, just like in the interviews and the reflections, the students will be provided the teacher efficacy definition and the 5 sources that fuel one's self-efficacy and their meanings as well. The next form of data collection is 10 to 12 non-participatory observations with informal conversations between the student and the researcher. And it says student, but I mean pre-service teacher. And so again, these pre-service teachers will be teaching twice a week at the elementary school with students with disabilities. They'll be teaching 30-minute lessons. They'll be teaching an hour in total each week. And during that lesson, the outside researcher will observe their lesson and just jot down what's taking place. After the lesson, the researcher will ask the pre-service teacher what they think went well, and then areas they'd like to do better at moving forward. And then the researcher will ask the student, well, first the researcher will provide the 5 sources, again, in the teacher efficacy definition. And then the researcher will ask, of what went well today, which of these 5 sources of self-efficacy contributed to your success? And then the researcher will also ask, okay, based on these areas you want to improve on, what do you need more of from self-efficacy theory? Which of the 5 sources will help you be more successful moving forward? And then the next form of data collection is a 1 critical incident account in the form of a journal entry. Again, teacher efficacy definition will be provided, and the 5 sources of self-efficacy will be provided in their definitions. And a critical incident account, it's a form of data collection that inspects significant events, situations acknowledged by the participant, the way they are managed, and the results in terms of observed outcomes. The aim of a critical incident is to spread understanding of the incident from the viewpoint of the participant. And the specific CIA or the specific critical incident will be used to increase insight of events that influence the pre-service teacher's teacher efficacy. So it's similar to a journal entry, but it's different because we're going to have them think about a time or experience that significantly impacted them and their teacher efficacy as they work with students with disabilities as a pre-service teacher. And again, that will come in the form of an email from the outside researcher. They'll jot their response down and then send it back to the outside researcher. And then next, relevant documents and artifacts will also be collected. This could be a lesson plan that the pre-service teacher wrote. It could be a lesson plan example from a professor. It could be an article from a professor. It could be a handout from a colleague or from a professional development. Whatever it is that they in their mind refer to that they just think it really boosts their self-efficacy as they work with students with disabilities, we're going to jot that down and add that to their folder of data collection. And then lastly, email communication will take place. And all data collection will continue until saturation is reached, meaning the researchers will collect data until no new patterns are arising. And then for data analysis, there's 4 different phases. And data will be analyzed both inductively and deductively. Inductively meaning we're going to analyze it and just see naturally what is arising, what patterns are coming up. But also deductively, meaning we're going to look at our data through the lens of self-efficacy theory, and we're going to see, okay, what patterns are we seeing and how are these connecting to self-efficacy theory? And the first round of data analysis is open coding. And here I'll be identifying distinct concepts and themes for categorization, and then individual pieces of data will be labeled with a word or phrase that best represents the passage of qualitative data. And this picture on the left side, that's a visual of open coding. And then the next phase of data analysis is axile coding. And here I'll begin to draw connections between codes and organize codes I developed in open coding. And this visual on the right side is a good visual of what axile coding looks like. The next phase of data analysis is categorization. And here I'll attempt to group patterns observed in the data into meaningful units or categories. And through this process, categories will often be created by chunking together groups of previously coded data. And then last, for data analysis, we have theme development. And this will be applied to a set of texts, for example, interview transcripts or journal reflections. And here I'll closely examine the data to identify common themes, topics, ideas, and patterns of meaning that come up repeatedly. And then for trustworthiness and credibility, I'll have 5 sources contributing to this area. The first source will be the use of multiple researchers. My advisor and I, Dr. G, we're going to analyze the data together. And then again, I'm the teacher of record for this course. So I've used Adriana from my cohort to collect all data. That way, students don't feel pressured to give certain responses. And then the next source contributing to trustworthiness and credibility is data triangulation, just meaning I'm going to use multiple data sources to develop a more comprehensive understanding of the sources of teacher efficacy of the pre-service teachers. The next source is an audit trail. An audit trail, it's a qualitative strategy to establish the confirmability of a research study's findings. And confirmability involves establishing that the findings are based on the participants' responses instead of the researchers' own perceptions and biases. And parts of the audit trail may include examples of the coding process, descriptions of how I worked from individual codes to themes, and rationale for what codes were clustered together to form the basis of a theme. And the purpose of doing these things with the audit trail is just to clarify to my readers why I made the decisions I did and to show that my analysis follows a logical path dependent on the participants' responses and narratives. And next we have a search for negative cases. And by searching for and discussing negative cases, by searching for negative cases, I'll be searching for and discussing pieces of data that didn't support patterns emerging from the data. And then last, we have a member check. This will be conducted after data is collected and analyzed to confirm that the researchers are portraying the experiences of the participants accurately. So again, once data is collected and analyzed, I can get with each participant and ask or tell them, hey, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing, is this accurate? If not, what do you actually mean so I can change it to better fit what you want to say? And here's some interview example questions. And then, so again, I will have 3 different interviews, and here's the 3 foci of the different interviews. And this is not all of the questions. This is just an example question from each interview. If you're ready to move forward, if you can give me the little thumbs up emoji, I'll let you guys read over it. We'll go ahead and move forward. And here's examples of my reflection example questions, or here's an example of my reflection questions. I will have 3 different reflections, and there are the 3 different foci listed. And again, I will have more than 3 reflection questions. These are just examples from each reflection. And there's about 8 questions for each interview and reflection. I'll give you a couple seconds to read over these. If I'm moving too fast, you guys let me know. Okay, and then here's the example of the critical incident account I'll be using. And I will only use just one critical incident account. And again, this will take place in the form of a journal entry and will be emailed out to the participants by the outside researcher. Okay, I'm going to move forward unless anybody wants me to stay on this slide a little bit longer. Okay, and here's the data collection timeline. As Dr. G said, is it ideal that I already started collecting data? No, but like she said, you have to take advantage of the situations you have and the times you have with your research interests and what you have available to you at the time. So prior to the semester, her and I came together and we were like, you know, this is it. We got to do it now. Like, this is when I'll have the students, and it just fit the study well, we thought. So I did apply for IRB approval as soon as school started, and I got IRB approval mid-semester, and that's when I started collecting data. And we are almost through data collection, and next week will be the last week. And there's my references. Then let's see.
Well done. Well done, Emily.
Thank you.
At this time, I will open the floor for questions from the audience. And Dr. Shiver and Dr. Young, if you would hold your questions until after the audience is dismissed. All right, friends.
Adriana.
Yes, great job, Emily. That was amazing. I'm really proud of you. One question I have is, has anything surprised you so far in your analysis or data collection that you've done so far?
Yes, I would say the pre-service teachers, a lot of them value the imaginal experiences. And I mean, yeah, I think it's a meaningful tenet, but me personally, I thrive off of feedback and by watching people. And so, but it's made me take a step back and be like, wow, like, yeah, like I should probably start using that own practice in my own teaching. And so it just wasn't something I thought would be as valued as it is. And I think it just goes to show there's other ways we can motivate our pre-service APE teachers outside of modeling and outside of feedback. We need to coach them how to envision themselves being successful as well, because my students value it, and whatever makes them motivated and gives them confidence is what we got to use. So that's what I found interesting so far.
Awesome. Thank you.
I don't know if
Martin,
I can.
Dennis, any questions for Emily?
Yeah, I have one.
What's that, Martin?
Yeah, so the teacher efficacy, it has, I think, 4 or 5 kind of different aspects to it that you had showed. And so I was curious, from what you found out this far, or can you hypothesize what aspects of teacher efficacy your students are most familiar with, opposed to what they're maybe not familiar with?
So what tenets they're most familiar with compared to what tenets they're not familiar with?
Yeah.
Your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so physical and emotional states, my students are seeing the power of their mental health and their physical health on their teaching. And we've had some conversations of what to do if, you know, they're having a hard day in their home life, or if they didn't get enough sleep. And we've had meaningful conversations, and I've just told them, just fake it till you make it. Don't let the students know, you're struggling that day. Or, it can also be helpful to be truthful and vulnerable with your students and say, you know what, I am having a hard day today, but we're going to get through it together. And just seeing them see the value of physical and emotional states on their teaching. They didn't realize that until this study, because I throw these 5 tenets at them every single day and they're like, oh, wow. And so it's just really neat to, like I was telling you, I think performance and vicarious are super meaningful. I would say those two are, performance and vicarious are definitely ones that, they already knew. But for sure, and social persuasion too. But so yeah, I would definitely say imaginal and physical and emotional states, those are new and eye-opening to them and to me as well.
Okay, cool, excellent. Thank you.
No
Great
problem.
I
job.
just want to clarify that we will all be back here in the spring for Emily to present her results. So any in these responses to your questions are initial interpretations based on, qualitative design experts will say that data analysis begins when data collection starts, because as soon as you go into the environment, as soon as you start listening to your participants, you begin making interpretations and making meaning. And so this is perfectly acceptable and on point for Emily to be able to speak to this. But just to clarify that these are not necessarily the results or the findings yet, but they would be, they're clearly and obviously things that are coming through already that seem to be dominant, but we will confirm those via rigorous analysis after she gets settled in her new position. Dennis, do you have any questions?
Yeah, sure. I can share a question. Nice job. Very excellent. Awesome. Like looking back and like the semester is almost over, what do you feel like in terms like of qualitative design? Like what worked, what didn't? Do you feel like so far you were, you were able to answer the research questions that you wanted to answer essentially at the beginning?
I have found, I've always, since I've been again, I didn't know hardly anything about research until I got to UNM. But I remember in my qualitative research class that I took, I learned the term data triangulation. And, sure, it made sense. It's like, yeah, you need to have multiple data sources to make your study more credible. But after collecting all this data and being with my pre-service teachers, I think it's like, oh, wow, okay, I do see the importance of data triangulation, because it's interesting to see, again, like KG said, we haven't started analyzing yet, but you're already going to start to see patterns in data collection. But I have now, after going through with this data collection, I have seen that it is important to have multiple data sources, because it is interesting. I'm seeing similar beliefs and values through different forms of data collection. I just think that's super interesting. And it just goes to show, the more data sources you have, the richer your data is going to be. And you have something more rigorous to go off of. So I always believed it, but now I fully buy into the importance of data triangulation. Does that answer your question, Denny? Okay, thank you.
Well done. Okay, friends, audience members, thank you so much for supporting Emily. I'm going to invite you to log off now, please and thank you. Oh, you're getting a round of applause from the squad.
Thank you, guys.
Yay! All right, thank you, folks.
Great to meet y'all.